Hello everyone, Alistair Gold speaking about a Tottenham Hotspur victory. That sounds so much better to say, doesn't it? And this was as messy, as kind of horrible in ways as a victory can be. It was weird. It was a classic Tottenham Hotspur just not doing anything in a normal way victory. But in the weirdest way, it was probably the absolutely most perfect victory Spurs could have asked for at this moment. And I'll explain why. Spurs obviously had the 4-0 win against Palace a few weeks back, and you'd think, well, why not have another one of those? Why not have a really comfortable, easy kind of walkabout at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? Well, actually, that did Spurs no good a couple of weeks ago. If anything, it just kind of reminded them that they can kind of breeze through matches if they want. They can turn over bottom half opposition quite easily. As we saw in the results afterwards, it didn't really do much good for them. What they needed was a reminder, and to be fair to Pochettino, it's been something he's saying quite a lot recently. This team has to remember that they have to fight for every single game. It doesn't matter who they're playing. They absolutely have to act as a unit and battle together. And despite two of the weirdest incidents we've had so far, Tottenham Hotspur had to battle. They had to fight. They had to group together. Pochettino had spoken about unity just 2 days before and how he said the squad was unified, how there was this togetherness. And this was an absolutely perfect example. 10 men for, around an hour? They had to pull out everything. They had to show that they were kind of a united 10 players or so. And also it was exactly 10 players. And it was exactly what they needed. It was just this kind of ringing wake-up call just to remind them that this is how Tottenham Hotspur have got to where they have. This is, they didn't get to a Champions League final a couple of months ago by just, playing sexy football and flowing through matches without much kind of, trouble. They need to fight. They're a battling team. I've always said this, and anyone that reads my stuff or has seen these will know, the best Tottenham Hotspur is the one that absolutely works its backside off, hassling, harrying, pressing, pushing forward, passing, breaking, everything. And this was it. This was exactly what they needed. We'll talk about the journey of how they actually managed to have to get to a performance like that. But it's just funny the way that fate works, that ahead of, another game Tuesday night against Bayern Munich where they're going to have to battle and scrap for everything, this was that perfect little kind of just moment. Just one of those. I think Pochettino used the phrase afterwards, this is the point to work from, as if to say, all he has to do now is show the team clips of their individual performances, really, and just show them that's why you are who you are. That's why we're a team that have finished fourth, the top four in 4 consecutive years. It's all about that battle and the fight and the togetherness. Pochettino has created a team that's all about the togetherness, and we won't harp on what happened over the summer and the unsettled player, blah, blah, blah. But this just showed that after all of that, this team still sticks together when it matters the most, and hopefully it's the start of kind of clicking back into gear this season. So let's talk about the match itself. The first goal, Ndombele. He was magnificent in, I'd say, the first half. He had glimpses in the second half. He kind of came in a bit in and out, but that's fine. That's kind of what we're going to expect from him, a young player in the Premier League. But that first half in particular, especially that first half hour or so, I just thought he was phenomenal. I thought he gave the Premier League a real glimpse of why Spurs paid so much money for him and why so many clubs in Europe wanted him after last year's exploits. He was phenomenal. Southampton just couldn't really deal with him. They were struggling to keep up with him. There was one run I remember him going on where he left kind of 4 Saints players in his wake, and one of them just had to hack him down. It just had to trip him from behind because he was going to go all the way towards the goal. And he was just firing on all cylinders, looked confident, was flowing. He had one shot that was deflected over the bar, and then came his kind of big moment in that, I think it was a ball, wasn't it, to the back post that got knocked on or flicked on by a defender, and Son got it, knocked it back across, and it was on Ndombele, absolutely lashing it home. It got the slightest of deflections. I think if you see the footage slowed down, you see the spin of the ball changes slightly. I think it goes off the shoulder of one of the defenders. So that's why the goalkeeper does this bizarre thing where the ball kind of He just looks complete. I think he was unsighted as well, which didn't help. But if anyone deserved it after that first half hour, it was Tanguy Ndombele. He was superb. And I quite like the little kind of pre-organised celebration with Serge Aurier. It was all VAR based, all a bit of that, and like waiting to see if the goal had been allowed. It was a funny little moment. Although I would say, if you have two players, and you'd imagine maybe because he's one of their mates as well, Sissoko was in on it. If you think of three players, maybe shouldn't be probably planning a goal celebration because they actually don't score that many. It's those three players. I think Ndombele scored, I read somewhere in Liga, and scored once for Amiens and Lyon over his entire time with both clubs. Obviously with Spurs, I think he's got it's two now, isn't it? Two, both at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium as well. But yeah, if there's three players that probably shouldn't be sorting out a goal celebration because it's unlikely to happen, it's them. But what do I know? They straight away went and scored one of them, and it was a nice goal. Then everything went wrong. For a while anyway. What a mess. What a mess. Serge Aurier's first challenge, absolute. Oh, what he was thinking. Honestly, he was kind of scything in with 2 feet. If he connected slightly differently, it's one of those days that might have even got a straight red for it because he was bringing the 2 legs together. And then what came next? Obviously, there'll be questions, and I haven't actually seen anyone really show a great angle yet, whether the ball went out of play first. Harry Winks shouting for it. Then the ball goes down, and Aurier clips his man as he's trying to run through. It's just daft. You can use the excuse of the throw on if you want, but ultimately, why is Aurier wrong side? He does it too many times. And it kind of, as soon as it happened, he started trudging off because he didn't complain. There was no complaints whatsoever. He knew he'd absolutely messed up. And as he's walking off, Pochettino didn't even look at him, just kind of went down the tunnel. And it just reminded me of the quote Pochettino said a couple of weeks back when Aurier had that fantastic game against Crystal Palace, having come back. It was his first minutes of the season, I think. And he came back into the team, was fantastic. But Pochettino wasn't getting carried away because he knows the way Serge Aurier operates. He said after the match, he was great, fantastic performance, really, really terrific performance. However, what we now need to see from Serge is to see him producing this, not just one game or the second game, but in the third game as well, and absolutely keeping this level of consistency and focus and concentration. Three starts later, and he goes and has a heads gone moment like this. It's unfortunately, it seems to be the career path. He's he's going to be 27. I think he is I think it's Christmas Eve. His birthday is. I'm not a stalker, honest. I think it was only because I read that yesterday. 27 years old, and he's at the point in his career where he's a very talented player. He's got all the attributes to be the answer to Tottenham's right-back problem. He's got pace, he's got power, he's got good technique. When he concentrates, he can sling in a great cross, as we saw against Crystal Palace. But it's just the focus. There are so many times during the game when he'll get caught out and someone will get in behind him. He'll be out of position. His anticipation can be rubbish. If he could just focus and just get his game in that place, he could be one of Europe's best right-backs. But I still have these doubts of whether it'll happen at Tottenham Hotspur. He wanted to leave in the summer. Very well may want to leave in January again. I'm just still very uncertain about him, and I get the feeling Pochettino is as well, especially those comments a couple of weeks ago. So that was Aurier's moment. Then Hugo Lloris came into play. Hugo Lloris, absolutely world class with his hands. World Cup winner, one of the best in the world with reaction saves, stops, flying blocks, even punching out from corners. He gets flack sometimes from his stuff at corners, but I actually think he's really good at it. So that's all with his hands. With his feet, he is a Sunday League player, honestly. And we're not talking, Steve, the pacey striker up front who scores 30 goals against, the Sunday League top dogs. We're talking about Barry, the big overweight centre-back who you stand next to him and you can smell his Saturday night exploits steaming off of him as he sweats. Lloris is just, with his feet, it's terrifying. I don't know about you, but even as a journalist sitting in the press box, I'd imagine the fans are the same. Every time the ball's passed back to him, it's like, you kind of do that. You kind of flinch slightly as if, oh my God, where's this ball going to go next? If he's not going to kick it out of play, which often actually might be the best thing, he's going to knock it to one of the opposition, or we have the absolute horror show of a moment that happened yesterday. Honestly, I know he did something similar-ish in the World Cup final, but this was how you managed to execute the absolutely perfect Johan Cruyff turn, but just forget you actually need the football to be part of the movement. It was unbelievable. It's just, and he had time and space. It wasn't even like you kind of watch it and you're thinking, you don't need to be letting Danny Ings get that close to you. You don't need to let him kind of get that close to be able to press you into what everyone in the stadium could then see you're about to do. And if you're not going to take the ball with you, you're going to present Danny Ings, a guy who, was considered quite a talented goal scorer, probably hasn't scored the goals he would have expected to in recent seasons, and you're giving him a gift. Honestly, it literally has to tap it into a net. It was just... It is honestly, you can't even... As a manager, you can't legislate for it. Teammates are just like, what? But I have to say, I think we got a real glimpse of Hugo Lloris' mentality yesterday. This could have been absolutely crippling for many keepers. They could have absolutely gone into their shell and it all could have gone even more pear-shaped from then and they could have let in far more goals. Hugo Lloris proved why he is a leader. I know he gets a lot of flack, people saying he shouldn't be Tottenham captain. This is a guy that is the captain of France. You look at that France squad and the team with the superstars, Griezmann, Pogba, players like that, yet he is the guy they look up to. He is the leader of that team, and that is all because of the mentality. And I'd say from that moment on, he was flawless. Had he not had that incredibly awful moment, he would have been man of the match by a mile. He pulled off 2 saves in the second half that for me were absolutely world class. You had the save from Ward-Prowse's free kick that was going in the top corner, amazing save. But even better for me was the save from Yoshida's header. It was close range, it required incredible reactions. It was phenomenal. And I thought it was an absolutely lovely moment at the end when he went over to the big South stand, the big single tier, 17,500 seater South stand, and he was kind of almost apologetically kind of like applauding them, but knowing like, oh my God, you could absolutely destroy me right now if you wanted to. But they didn't. They just, they chant out, Hugo, Hugo, so loudly, all of them. And it was a really lovely moment. It was a bit of a, we know you messed up. We know that's not your forte, using your feet, but we appreciate that you essentially then went on to save the game. And it was great. And I mean, I asked Pochettino about Lloris afterwards, and he said, please don't blame Lloris. Blame me. I am the guy who tells him to play like that. Obviously, he's not telling him to do Johan Cruyff turns 3 yards from his goal line, but what he is saying, he wants him to play the ball out from the back. He hates the long diagonal balls. So the ones that Alderweireld does that we love, Pochettino actually really doesn't like those. He wants the team to play out from the back, hold possession, build up the play, and that's what he asks of Lloris. And that's why Lloris, because of his not so great ability with his feet, he's going to get into scenarios like that. God, if you could mould a goalkeeper that had the ability with his feet of Gazzaniga and ability of his hands of Lloris, you would have arguably the best goalkeeper in the world. I honestly think that. I think Gazzaniga is brilliant with his feet and Lloris with his hands is just phenomenal. But it's great to see he kind of recovered so quickly from that, and obviously it doesn't look like it's going to be something that hangs over him. I think just please don't pass him the ball quite so much. Or if you are going to do it, defenders, please give him a little bit more time and tell him not to do Cruyff turns. So we go back to that moment. It's just happened. Lloris has just had his nightmare, and Spurs suddenly struck back. There was no wallowing. There was no, oh my God, it's happened again. They went straight on the pitch with one of the nicest counter-attacks I think they've put together this season. It was Sissoko up, wasn't it? Kane flicked down. Son took a touch, beat a challenge, went off to played it off to Eriksen, ran on. Eriksen found him, and then he pulled it back to Eriksen, who did a very clever kind of no-look flick on to Kane. this lovely little touch to kind of dig it out from his feet and away from the defender, and then volleyed it bouncing into the corner. It was a lovely goal from front to back. And also, props to Moussa Sissoko, who started it all off at the back with, ironically, one of those long balls that Pochettino doesn't like. But Sissoko, for me, he only just got this new deal, didn't he, the other day, which I understand is 3 years plus an option for another one, although they sold it as a 4-year deal, which was unusual for me. But Sissoko, for me, he slotted into that right-back slot. He wasn't perfect, but he was bloody good. His anticipation, went a bit Sean Connery there, his anticipation, his blocking, his positional play, his getting forward was actually everything that Tottenham want from a right-back. And I think it was a bit of a lesson. I think Serge Aurier and him are such good mates, but I think Aurier could learn a lot from Sissoko about consistency. Obviously, we know that's come over time. It's probably the last 2 years or so, but I thought he was a really good right-back. I think he actually, if Pochettino wanted to be brave, he probably could be Spurs right-back going forward, but you would also lose that energy from the centre of the pitch. And obviously, you can maybe argue Sissoko's crossing isn't good enough in the final third. That's probably the one thing that counts against him. But I thought he was superb yesterday when he moved. He just shows his versatility. He will always get flat because he's Moussa Sissoko. Some people have decided, they've judged him obviously on what happened before and his limitations in an attacking sense, and he will never unfortunately do right by those people. But for me, I see a guy that's improved massively, and I think that's why the club have offered him, what is ultimately a 4-year deal to a guy who's in his 30s. I think that says a lot. They're not doing that to a lot of players, which shows the faith they have in him, and Pochettino has in him. No, I thought he did really, really well. And also I mentioned for Harry Kane, obviously goal aside, which was a lovely finish, I thought Kane was brilliant yesterday. This, for me, was probably his best performance of the season. He held the ball up so well. When you've got 10 men, you need your striker to be holding up the ball and giving you a chance to breathe and then help you move on to make attacks. It reminded me of, I don't know if you guys remember, when Robbie Keane got sent off for a handball on the line against Bolton years back. And then Dimitar Berbatov had to play the lone striker role for a 10-man Tottenham. I think Spurs ended up winning 3-0 on the day, I think it was maybe. It just, for me, that was the pinnacle of a lone striker performance for Berbatov. And I think Harry Kane showed kind of real glimpses of that. It was so strong. They struggled to get the ball off of him and he brought others into play. And when you've got a man less, that's what you need. You need someone that will, like I say, give you that little moment to breathe as a team. Otherwise, you're just going to be shattered and constantly chasing a ball that's always going to be coming back at you. It was superb. To be honest, there were a lot of really good performances yesterday. I've seen some people saying, it was an awful performance. I hate the word circumstances because Pochettino's used it 7,024 times this season, but I think you have to look at them in this game. And to be 10 men against the 11 players of Southampton, I thought there were some really, really good performances. I thought Jan Vertonghen looked far more like his old self. I thought he and Toby Alderweireld were really solid. They actually, other than those 2 saves that Lloris had to make in the second half, very little got through. And obviously both of those are some set pieces as well. But in actual open play, if you think back on it, Spurs really, really limited Southampton despite having less men. I thought Danny Rose was usual Danny Rose, full of passion and bluster, some really, really good sliding tackles from him. Didn't offer too much going forward, but I think that's excusable because there were 10 men and his job was more to sit back yesterday. In the midfield slots, we've spoken about Ndombele. I thought he had a bit of a quiet moment early in the second half, but then he kind of got a second wind and he started to drag the ball out of defence as well. He's only young, so he's got to learn maybe not to keep trying the dribbling out of defence all the time because he's got caught a couple of times yesterday and that will happen. It's a very different pace league, the Premier League to Ligue 1 in France, and he's going to have to kind of get used to that. But much, much, much better from Ndombele yesterday. Thought Harry Winks was excellent again. I'm really wary. I find that when I do my player ratings after the game, I'm so wary now of constantly giving Winks an 8 because I feel that people are going to think I'm just some kind of Harry Winks fanboy, which maybe I am. But I just think this season he's been so consistently good. He drives the team on. He's there blocking. He's a sweeper. He's the guy that kind of leads the attacking play and brings others into play. He's not your final third guy, but I just think, Moussa Ndombele never was, but he obviously got highly lauded for everything, lauded. I just think Winks is general. He's a busybody. He's a pain in the backside. He's like, if Eric Lamela was a central midfielder, he would be a little bit like Harry Winks. He's everywhere. He's in your face. He's just, it reminds me a little bit of Scott Parker. It's funny, I was talking to Oliver Skip a couple of weeks back, and he said, use Scott Parker as an example, a role model. And I kind of feel that with Winks. It's a similar thing. A player who you might look at it and think, well, what does he actually do productivity-wise? But actually, if you take him out of the team, you suddenly notice he's not there. He's a really, really good player. I thought Son and Eriksen, I've seen people raving about Son. I wouldn't go that far. I thought he did incredibly well for both goals. I thought first half he was a real menace. Second half he did a lot of running. I wouldn't say he was quite as deadly as we can see Son being, but I thought it was a decent performance. I thought he worked incredibly hard. I thought Eriksen, the quality wasn't there other than for the Kane goal. That was a wonderful bit of play both times, his involvement in that goal. I think his lack of quality was there from the set pieces still. I think he had one that Son headed at the keeper. But other than that, his first corner didn't even clear the first man. And he's got to fix that. But in terms of effort, you couldn't fault him. He was everywhere. He knew he had a different kind of role, bearing in mind it was 10 men. And he had to create while also trying to work hard. So I'm not going to give him too much of a slating. I thought he was decent. I'll give him a decent for that as well. And then we've spoken about Kane. And also an honourable mention for the subs. A couple of them anyway. Eric Lamela. Again, another one. A bit like Winks. I don't want to appear too much of a fanboy, but I think Lamela's had a really consistent season so far. I think, we're not far in, so we can't go overboard. But just having an Eric Lamela that's not crippled by injuries, not fragmenting his season with injuries, I think we're starting to see what he can do. I thought when he came on, he actually really changed, the course of Spurs play, had a massive impact. I felt he came on and suddenly Spurs were holding the ball up. He was running with the ball, creating counter-attacks, breaking up play from Southampton, winning free kicks. It was his pass to Kane that led to this beautiful turn by Kane and run into the box where he shot just across the face of goal. I thought Lamela was really, really good. I just thought he struck the perfect balance between the defensive side of the job he had to do because of the 10 men, but also dragging Spurs up the pitch and giving Southampton something to think about. And if you're constantly defending, it's draining. Whereas if you're alleviating that and having breaks upfield, and I thought him and Kane worked really well together. And I thought also Eric Dyer, it was quite nice to see him come on and just for not too long, it was only 10 minutes or so, but just be a really effective screen in front of the defence. Spurs have probably missed that. That's the three midfielders, Winks, Ndombele and Sissoko. They don't do that. Not one of them really sits there as a screen. And I thought Dyer came on and did that pretty well. And I think it's just a little glimpse or a reminder that, he's a very good player. Remember that first season or second season, him alongside Ndombele? What a brilliant partnership they were. And I think there's still a lot more to come from Dyer, whether it's at centre-back or in a back three where he becomes a defensive midfielder, or as a defensive midfielder who can drop back and make a back three, which I think he did so effectively for Pochettino early in the reign. And yeah, I hope we see more of Eric Dyer over the coming weeks. I think he's still got a big part to play for Tottenham. But just kind of summing up really, because I'm aware I'm waffling on, I think this, as I said, was just a perfect kind of match for Spurs to get their heads back in the game. They've had some results that haven't gone their way, but this showed that if they battled, didn't matter what they were up against, the adversity, they still came out the other side with the 3 points. And when you've got Bayern Munich coming to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Tuesday night, that's exactly what you need. Pochettino had backing. The fans, pretty early in the game, I think it was within the first 10 minutes, everyone was singing, Mauricio Pochettino, he's magic, it was going around the stadium. I know there's this kind of social media minority who still, I think, have now decided that Pochettino isn't the man. He very clearly said on Thursday, I am the man to take Tottenham to next level. And I think the fans inside the stadium, they certainly get that. We know he's got a habit at the moment of constantly reminding everyone about the Champions League final, but why not? Why not? I get it. You know, he probably mentioned it 4 times just yesterday after the match. But I think he just, maybe it's the disbelief in his head that the fans can't remember that just a few months ago they were in their first ever Champions League final. And of course, on top of these 4 consecutive top 4 finishes. I get it. I get why he's doing it. I think maybe it's just, like I said, this little bit of disbelief. But this was so much better from Tottenham. It had elements of everything we want to see from Spurs. And rather than going into the Bayern game now, just a little bit fragile confidence after a few ropey results, they go in now, I think, with a lot more belief. And it's going to be a cracking match. I think it'll be 2 under the lights, you know, big European night at the new stadium, you know, 60,000 or so Spurs fans roaring them on, that Champions League anthem that kind of sends shivers up your spine. I think it'd be a really, really good night, and hope we get some really good football. We've got tomorrow's the press conference and open training, so we'll obviously have more news, injury news, any new knocks. Kane came, took his boots off straight away at the final whistle. There's some little worries about his ankle, but then he afterwards played on for quite a while, had that great chance, driving run, so hopefully it's nothing too major. I asked Jesus Perez after the match, I just said, you know, is there any issue with Harry Kane? And he just simply said, oh, I haven't even spoken to him yet. So you can't really read anything into that either way. A bit of useless information, really, wasn't it? But hopefully, I mean, Kane won't want to miss a match like that. And I think the fact that he was playing afterwards, hopefully, we won't see any swelling afterwards, because that would be rather rubbish. Just before I go, I just want to say a little thank you, really. You know, this YouTube channel is still very much in its infancy. It's only been going for just over about a month and a half. I just want to really thank you all for viewing and all the many comments afterwards. They're always great. I try and go in and reply when I can. I mean, the stats have been really humbling. It's terrific. Just a month and a half in, I think we've had over 150,000 views, 1.2 million minutes viewed. I don't know whether that's people just sticking towards the end or me just waffling so much and people leaving it on and going off and making cups of tea and whatever. And I think we're about to pass 5,000 subscribers, which in 90 days or so is fantastic, and it's really much appreciated. You know, even a guy just sitting rambling in his kitchen as I'm doing right now, it's great. You know, I enjoy doing that, and hopefully this comes across in what I do, and it's lovely to know that you're watching and hopefully enjoying it as well. So I'll be back again later in the week. We'll talk about the European match, and hopefully we have some good stuff to talk about and a memorable European night. I shall catch you later.